Hello and welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and all. We've got a massive surprise for you. It's a real treat. Joining me and Mikey today, we've got Belinda, who you might recognise from our World Cup content about a year ago.
Yep.
Belinda, how are you?
I'm good,
Welcome
thanks.
back to Football Daily.
Oh, thanks for having me. It feels an honour to be back here in the famous setup. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolute pleasure. And just to explain to some of the viewers, you work at Sky Sports, don't you? You work in the football team.
Yeah.
You're working late night on Chelsea Newcastle last night.
Yeah, Chelsea Newcastle. Obviously, Chelsea got the last minute equaliser, so we had to stay a little bit later to finish the work off. So it's not too bad. Can't complain. Big game, big occasion. So
love it. And I think actually quite a big occasion, Mikey, because Belinda, I think, is our first ever Liverpool fan.
Crazy.
That has featured as a pundit on Football Daily, which is crazy.
It's mad.
That is an honour.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty mad how one of the biggest clubs in world football haven't had a representative on Football Daily, and I've been reminded of it so many times by my Liverpool supporting mates who are pretty convinced that there is an anti-Liverpool agenda kind of going throughout like Football Daily, which given that most people think that most Chelsea fans think there's an anti-Chelsea fan agenda, despite two very prominent Chelsea fans having been on there. It's a load of rubbish, but at the same time, it is good to have a Liverpool fan on.
Yeah, I'll
balance
it out today. I'll do some shamelessness.
I've got an inkling of at least one shameless Liverpool thing you're going to bring up, which I'm not looking forward to. But we roll.
Nice, love it. Actually, I was thinking about that. In the current era of Football Daily, first Liverpool fan, but Lawrence McKenna used to be on this Football Daily about 10 years ago.
That was the first that was even before the days of Joe Tomlinson.
Well, exactly, way before. So the first of this iteration. Anyway, today we are talking about, because it is Christmas Eve, I think this is coming out on. So happy Christmas, everyone that's watching. And it is coming towards the end of the year, coming towards the end of 2023. So it's time to be reflective. So we are going to do our Football Daily Awards for 2023, and we are going to kick off with our Manager of the Year award. Now, we don't necessarily have to agree, but it'd be nice if we came to some sort of agreement. Mikey, why don't you kick us off? Who is your Manager of the Year for 2023? Drum roll, please.
I think it's really obvious for me. It's not that obvious because Pep Guardiola did win a treble this year, so we can't discount that. And the job he has generally done at Man City over the last few years is incredible. 3 in a row as well in the Premier League. City very much still in the title hunt this season. I know they've been in poor form recently, but who knows, by the time this goes live, they may be Club World Cup champions as well. So huge year for Pep Guardiola. But has he... I just think Unai Emery's had a better year in many respects. I think he's done a more impressive job as a manager. Pep... what he did last year was kind of set in place over a number of years. What Unai Emery has done in 12 months, I just can't think of a club turnaround as massive as it. His win rate at Villa is 62%. That's kind of that is almost Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool levels. And throughout his career, the only club he's done better at in that sense is PSG, when he had Mbappe and Neymar at his disposal. And when he took over at Villa, 12 points from 13 games in November 2022. They were level on points with Southampton and Leeds, who are now battling it out for a playoff spot in the Championship. That was only just over a year ago. And by the time everyone's watching this, Villa could be top of the league, depending on what happens in their game against Sheffield United, depending on what happens in that Liverpool game against Arsenal. Villa could genuinely be top of the league in one of the most competitive title races we've seen in years, against the best Arsenal team we've seen in years, against one of Klopp's most impressive Liverpool sides, against a Man City team that won the treble last year, even if they're a little bit out of shape at the moment. I just can't really see anyone better. Like the amount of players in that team that he's improved. He's done it also. This season Villa are flying despite Tyrone Mings, their captain, being out since the start of the season. That well documented home form, which may have gone up to 16 wins in a row. I may be jinxing this. They may have lost 3-0 to Sheffield United. I doubt it. That's my case for Unai Emery. I don't know whether you two have anyone
Belinda,
different.
I mean, what were you thinking on this?
I mean, to be fair, you set it up and then rubbished it because mine was Pep Guardiola. I literally, my top line is, it's hard to argue against the treble winner.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it is hard.
Well, I mean, no, but you did it well. So, I think, it was Alex Ferguson and Klopp, the only managers to win the Premier League and the Champions League in English football at an English club. And then he joined that elite group of managers. again, coming up against a different kind of title rival in Arsenal, and didn't even faze him and his City side, literally just rubbished them. So yeah, they're facing some adversity right now, but I don't think anyone doubts that they won't be in this title race come the new year, and this is just a new challenge that him and his side will rise up to. And yeah, I feel like Emery, I've been convinced, to be honest. But yeah, I had Pep Guardiola.
I think it's a fair shout, to be fair. I mean, just on the title race, while we've got you, Belinda, Liverpool, what are you thinking? I know we've got this huge Arsenal game, obviously it took place last night as you're watching this, but do you think Liverpool are right in it? Do you think you've got a good chance?
Yeah, it's. I feel like at home we feel pretty invincible, and I feel like, you know, against every team in the league, I'd want us to win at home. It's when we go away from home and it's a bit more difficult, a bit more sticky. I wonder what this team sort of got about them. And in recent weeks, you know, late winners against Palace and grinded out wins against Sheffield United, they've shown, they can dig in. So in that sense, I'm happy we're up there. In terms of coming into the season, we all thought this would be the transitional year. We were bringing in the new midfield and let them settle, but we're right up and around there at Christmas, so we could be top on Christmas Day as well. And we'll just see how it goes. Obviously, we've got January's usually a tough time for Klopp and his side, especially with AFCON this year. So we'll see what goes. Just let's enjoy the ride.
I like it. It has been a fascinating title battle so far. I think helped by City having this drop off post treble, and I wonder whether that's slightly affecting my thinking. I actually did have Pep down as my first choice as well. I didn't even think of Unai Emery, but it is a really good suggestion given where they were, which I don't think actually reflects that well on Steven Gerrard either, to be honest, how much of a mess that squad was in when he took over. Other candidates I also thought about Simone Inzaghi, won a second consecutive Coppa Italia at Inter Milan. I mean, finished third last year, but reached the Champions League final, thrashed their rivals Milan in the semi-final. That was really, really impressive. Dominating Serie A this year. I mean, I know the points gap between them and Juve isn't absolutely massive at the moment, but in terms of general levels of performances, I think they're chalk and cheese right now, to be totally honest. Also thought about Luciano Spalletti winning that title with Napoli, first one in 33 years. That was really pretty special, but then did step down at the end of that season. So from May onwards, he hasn't been managing a club, then took over Italy, and it hasn't gone swimmingly for Italy so far. I think they've got 3 wins in 6 games under Spalletti, took a 0-0 draw against Ukraine to qualify for Euro 2024. But I actually went with Pep as well. Just it felt wrong not to go with him for such a unique achievement. But if you're going calendar year, January to December, I think Emery's a very good shout as well. Yeah. So who are we happy to... Belinda, you get ultimate say.
Do you know what? You argued it so well.
Are you gonna be swayed?
Oh, I don't want to get cooked in the comments.
Yeah, this is how it begins. Get a Liverpool fan that hates City. Yeah.
I don't hate City. Let's go Emery then. Calendar year. Emery.
I must admit, with Pep, like the one particularly impressive thing about Pep is, I think that really sets this year apart. Not just the treble, is that the fact that he was able to, like, switch things up with City this year in a way we hadn't seen in a while. So I think I don't know. Yeah, they're both very worthy, but. Yeah, thanks for going with Emery.
I like it.
Very generous of you both.
I mean, we're not really scoring this, but it's 1-0 to Mikey if we were. Right, let's move on to Wonderkid of the Year. Now, the stipulation here was they had to be 20 or under, and we couldn't include Jude Bellingham because he's the obvious candidate, deserved winner of the Coppa Trophy, absolutely exceptional at Real Madrid. I don't think we're sort of running out of superlatives for him. I think I saw the other day he's already equalled. I mean, he's got 13 league goals so far. I think Steven Gerrard topped that twice in his career at Liverpool, which does just put into perspective how special he's been for Real Madrid so far. But let's talk Wonderkid of the Year, except for Jude Bellingham. Belinda.
I had Jamal Musiala.
Good shout.
Again, like, I looked at his numbers for last season and 12 goals, 10 assists. And I think he would have been 19 as well for part of that season. So to do that, to establish yourself in the top 5 league at that age for a big side like Bayern Munich is just wonder kid things. And moments maketh the man, or in this case, the wonder kid. And to have the Bundesliga winning moment on the last day in emphatic fashion that he had was just incredible. And I think that's my case for Jamal Musiala. I don't know how well it's been going for him this year, but I think that's what you get when you're a kid coming through, right? You're allowed to have dips in your form and whatnot. So, yeah, I think if we're going Jude Bellingham aside, I think he's the next understudy.
Yeah, I think he's been brilliant, particularly in the first half of last year. So the early stages of 2023, I think he was absolutely exceptional. Maybe has slightly faded at the start of this season, but as you say, Leroy Sané coming to the fore, Harry Kane coming to the fore in that Bayern side as well. He's just kind of finding his feet there. I still think he's an absolutely phenomenal player. His ability to dribble with the ball, it always looks like he's about to lose it as well, but he just about keeps it under control. He's such a fascinatingly sort of unique player to watch. Mikey, who are you throwing into the ring?
I think Musiala's a really good shout. We originally, when we were chatting about this, we went for under 19s, and then I looked around, and then I was like, actually, there's not that big a choice out there, so we changed it. I realised that I forgot to actually look at 20-year-old players, but the two I've got here, I think, are still good shouts. I think Musiala's probably edges them. Thought initially Evan Ferguson, I think, needs a shout for his form for Brighton this year. 6 goals in the Premier League last year, 6 goals this year. Had that great hat-trick against Newcastle at the start of the season as well. He looks like he looks like a superstar in the making, doesn't he? And those 12 goals have all come since New Year's Eve 2022.
Okay.
It's kind of come full circle in that sense.
Would you say you'd like a bit more? I don't think he's scored for quite a while.
He also just doesn't play quite enough, does he?
Yeah.
And that's fine. He's only just turned 19 this year, I believe. I had him down, but really, actually, my actual shout, I think, would be Gavi. Again,
nice. Yeah.
He's been around a while, but like for a player who only turned 19 in the summer to be so integral to Xavi's system at Barcelona, he's their top presser. He's, he can play, in the forward line as well. He really makes that Barcelona side tick, which, given the influence that a player like Pedri's had on it in the past, given that you have Lewandowski in that side, given that you had like Ousmane Dembele in pretty good form at points last season at least, before he left, I think speaks volumes. Like I think I think also it's telling that Barca have been in pretty bad form since he's been injured. I know they weren't amazing before that, but they've really gone down a level again, I think, since that ACL injury. And obviously it's pretty tragic that he's probably going to miss the Euros as well, given that was going to be his probably his first real big tournament. In terms of his stature within that Spain team, so that's a shame. I think I'll go with Gavi for my candidate in that sense over Evan Ferguson.
I thought of Musiala as well. I thought of Zaire Emery, but I'm actually going with Florian Wirtz of Bayer Leverkusen, because he was literally injured with an ACL injury until about January time, and then came back. And I think Leverkusen were 12th at the time, ended up reaching a Europa League semi-final. I think he ended up with around 10 goal contributions in all competitions in the back half of the season. Leverkusen ended up finishing 8th. And then this year, he has taken his game to a completely ridiculous level. And Leverkusen, as we film this, are still the only unbeaten side in all competitions in Europe's top 5 leagues. They've drawn, I think, 2 out of 24 games. They've scored 77 goals. And Florian Wirtz has been the best player. And I think it's the storyline, along with probably Girona, this season. It's the most captivating storyline in European football right now, Bayer Leverkusen. I think he's been absolutely superb. His technical excellence in tight spaces, his finishing. I don't know whether you guys saw his goal at the weekend, the sort of impudent chipped finish. He's been absolutely sensational. 8 goals and 11 assists in 22 league games. It's very difficult to argue with. And I think he's been better than Musiala this season so far. And I think he's been better than Gavi this season so far, because Gavi's had that injury. So maybe there's a little bit of an element of recency bias in it, because he probably wasn't as exceptional as Musiala in the back half of last year. But I think for a candidate right now, I think it's difficult to look past him. Who are we ultimately going for?
I think it's between you two, isn't it?
Musiala.
Is it? Because I really like Gavi as well.
I think I'm slightly swayed by Wirtz. I'm slightly swayed by Wirtz. I think
Linda,
it's recency. I'm swayed by recency bias as well. I think if Musiala had been a more integral, even if Musiala was just getting more game time in that Bayern Munich team this year, I think that's what swings it. It's just that Wirtz, as soon as he's come back, has kind of been the main man. Even though he wasn't quite as electric last season, he was still very decent. But that's not to discount from Musiala. I think it was like last season, I think Musiala would win by a country mile, because he was just like, throughout last season he was brilliant. But it's just a bit of a shame that he hasn't had the game time he probably deserves under under Tuchel this season.
Yeah. Let's give it to Wirtz.
We'll give it Wirtz, and but I'm making a prediction.
Okay.
Wirtz is going to be one of those players we say for the next like 5-6 years. Oh, what a wonder kid! What a star boy he is!
Absolutely. I think there has been some links with Man City recently.
Oh.
As that De Bruyne replacement. I know. Or maybe it's just Twitter talk, but it would be a fantastic link up. Right, let's move on to most improved player. Why don't I kick us off on this?
Yep.
I'm actually not too happy with my suggestion because it makes it sound like he wasn't a good player before 2023. I've actually gone with Lautaro Martinez, which is a little bit of a cheat code because, I mean, his goal return over the last 3 completed seasons, 14, 17 and 21 in the league alone. So, you know, he's always been an exceptional player, but I feel like coming into this year, he was under a little bit of pressure because he'd come off a pretty poor World Cup by his standards. Hadn't scored in 6 appearances, I think it was. Julian Alvarez outshining him, eventually displacing him as that partner to Lionel Messi up front, or at least the focal point of their attack. And then, you know, at the back end of this year, he, you know, got to the Champions League final, but I think he only scored 2 goals in the Champions League, and it was really Lukaku's form that kind of steered them towards a very respectable finish in Serie A and that Coppa Italia. So he had a good season last year, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just the way he's taken his game to new levels so far this season. I mean, 17 goals already and 4 assists in 22 games in all competitions. He's been absolutely exceptional, by far the best player in Serie A this season. Absolute pressing monster. His link-up play is now really good, and the fact he's having to play with a new strike partner in Marcus Thuram after that long-established relationship with Lukaku came to an end, with Lukaku going to Roma, and he's just become the main man. And there are links with Premier League sides. There's links with Real Madrid. The guy wants to sign a new deal. He doesn't want to leave Inter Milan anytime soon, and I think he's been absolutely exceptional so far this season. I mean, only Kane, Mbappe and Girassi have scored more than his 15 league goals to date at the moment, and I think he's been absolutely brilliant. But it does feel like a little bit of a cheat because, as I said, he was a very good player before 2023. So, Belinda, I'm intrigued by your suggestion for most improved.
So my one, it's a player who was good, like he was Premier League established, there's no doubt about it, but I think he's going to end this season with like potential to be maybe player of the year, like in terms of the season, and that player is Declan Rice.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Because for me, I think, so he was captain of a West Ham side that got the European glory, and like I think to do that at the age he is already a like fantastic thing for him and for his CV, and being the holding midfielder I think in that side as well. It's like such a key part of the pitch to be the main man in, and he has to dominate, he has to win the ball, he has to be good on the ball to play it forward, he has to link up the defence to attack. He's integral to so much of what that West Ham side did. Then to get the big move to Arsenal and to step up, I think that's the next thing. It's like he's constantly had questions asked of him this year, and he's constantly answered them and passed the test with flying colours. And Arsenal, there's like certain signings are transformative, and I think they could, if Arsenal win the league, I think that's when we'll look back on and say that was the signing.
A bit like
that did
Van Dijk and Alisson with
exactly
you guys.
Like that. Yeah, like it'll be like, yeah, he was the one who took them from the side who was challenging but didn't really get them over the line to he was that guy. So for me, that's how I've like ranked my improvedness.
Yeah.
I've tried to
He's been absolutely exceptional. I couldn't agree more. Mikey, did you take it more literally for like
I took a bit more literally.
Like a proper improvement? Because I think me and Belinda went with players that were close to world class.
Yeah, I've gone. I mean, I do like. I think they are both good shots. I think Lautaro I've always thought has played at a high level. So I don't know if I'm that on board with it, although he is having the season of his life. So like I do get it. Rice as well to step up at Arsenal is huge. I've gone for Anthony Gordon. I just think, given that there was a lot of chat around his move and the price tag of it from Everton to Newcastle, I thought a bit unfair. I've said that before. I think if you're an English forward and you're promising, then I think 40 mil is pretty much a base level that a club will end up paying, especially a club that has Champions League ambitions, as Newcastle did at the time. Obviously, they're just been knocked out of the Champions League, but made the top 4 last year, and I just think, given that he was playing in a very dysfunctional Everton side at the time, we weren't really able to see his best on a consistent basis. Lots of had a lot of doubters in the press, among football Twitter, among fans,
myself included.
Yeah, like Anthony Gordon was. Yeah, his stock was pretty low, and I think that's that can weigh quite hard on a young player. Especially in the Premier League where the scrutiny just never stops. And I think first of all, I think he's done a great job to prove those doubters wrong this season, especially given he only got 4 starts last term. He was very much behind Joel Linton and Alan Saint-Maximin on that left-hand side for Newcastle in the second half of last season. And how was or the club in general were bold enough to be like, no, this left-hand side is going to be different from now on. Alan Saint-Maximin doesn't fit the profile of player that we need in this position. However, they still went out and signed Harvey Barnes, who everyone probably thought was going to be the first choice, and he wasn't. Even before that injury, which has kept him out since September. Anthony Gordon was the first choice on the left wing. I think Barnes only had 1 or 2 starts at the start of the year, and 6 goals and 4 assists later. Newcastle in an injury crisis. I think he's aside from maybe Bruno G, I think he's maybe been Newcastle's best player this season.
He might have been the best left winger in the league. So
that is pretty amazing. And not only just down to him. I think again it's another example of how Eddie Howe has done a brilliant job at Newcastle, to be able to take a young player who had a lot of pressure on him coming to Newcastle, coming from a relegation threatened side, coming from a side which didn't really have any kind of attacking patterns at all, and to now be one of the main men at a team that was competing in the Champions League up until last week, and also putting in really big performances in the Champions League as well. I think was really, really impressive. So Anthony Gordon would be my shout for this.
Belinda, I think as good as Rice and Lautaro Martinez have been for the actual really sticking by the category.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Gordon is probably the most improved.
That's fair.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I was thinking. So then, do you think his goal scoring, just output, is the main trait that he's improved upon, or is there other elements to his game?
I think it's overall performance. Yeah, I think. And again, it could be recency bias, because really what you'd want is a player who had a terrible 2022 and then came in and had an amazing full year. Anthony Gordon didn't have an amazing second half of last season. He didn't really play enough and didn't impress that much. But I think it's just his overall play. Especially, I think it's especially in this Newcastle side, which is still managing to keep pace, but despite probably having more injury problems this term than any other team. That midfield has been all over the place in terms of personnel. Has managed to hold its own still, but given that there's been a lot of change around him, given that this team is not at the level that it should be personnel wise, I just think Gordon has dragged Newcastle through periods of games, and I think for a young player like him, I think that's quite impressive. Yep. But I don't know, I'm quite easy. I think the step up that Declan Rice has had to make in many ways is more impressive, because he's stepped into an Arsenal midfield where actually he's kind of got to do more than he did at West Ham in some ways. That's what's mad, is that he's kind of just been put in there and he's kind of just been given license to be the thrust of that team, which is pretty crazy, and do more defensive work than he was doing at West Ham as well. And he's become instantly a leadership figure
and scoring goals.
And scoring gols at Premier League title. So I think the Declan Rice shout is also pretty big. I think I wasn't drawn to someone like him when I originally thought about it, but in terms of someone who's had to step up, for sure. Declan Rice is a good shout.
I think a lot of West Ham fans might be a little bit frustrated, being he just didn't get the respect he deserved because he was playing for West Ham, whereas now he's at Arsenal, part of a title challenge. Everyone's kind of woken up to how good he was. I actually think that's a bit unfair, because I think he's been dominating Twitter, TV programs for years, to be honest, at West Ham. I think everyone was incredibly excited about him, performing really, really well for England. Belinda, you get ultimate say. Anthony Gordon or Rice?
Well, you can't, because I'll pick my own watch out then.
Yeah, do you got to go for it. It's between the two.
I think because I gave Anthony Gordon more stick, I'm going to go with Anthony Gordon.
Fair enough.
I always thought Rice was exceptional, but Rice is a very good shout as well. Right, let's move on to Veteran of the Year. So these players have to be over 32. Belinda, who's your Veteran of the Year?
So I've come full circle. So I was on Football Daily a year ago during the World Cup. I think there was a clip that did a bit well with me talking about Antoine Griezmann.
Okay.
Ooh, so nice. He is my vet shout. He is 32 though, so I don't know. You have to
I think 32 counts.
Yeah, he's got this season so far, I think it's 17 goals and 4 assists, which is just insane. He's just become the joint all-time top goal scorer for Atletico Madrid. So he's established himself there, and like I think just the comeback he's had, he's had lows in his career in a few seasons ago, and he's come back and become their key player again. And I think to do that at his age, and to not give up, to be relentless, to be ever present and evergreen, is really a testament to him. And he's played striker, he's played on the wing, he's played second striker, he's played 10, and I think he's even played 8 a bit this year. So he is a master of that third of the pitch, that attacking third, and I just love a player like him who, the football changes, football becomes more physical, football becomes faster and whatever, and he just gracefully takes it in his stride and plays the game his way, and never looks off the pace. And for someone who's vertically challenged like myself, it's nice to see someone like him who's a smaller guy, but he's still elite at so many attributes. So
that was beautiful. I couldn't agree more. He was actually my suggestion as well. I was on the same page. I think also, this guy is going to be Atletico Madrid's top goal scorer. Maybe by the time this video even goes live, he's also 4th on France's all-time list as well. I think there's only Giroud, Henry, and Mbappe ahead of him. Being like Didier Deschamps, there was that amazing run of, I think he played about 50 games in a row for France. He was picked pretty much every single game. Their key man. He had an exceptional World Cup. I know that doesn't count in 2023, but he's been pretty much faultless for a season and a half now. And as Belinda says, plays in a number of different positions, looks world class in all of them. One of the most complete attacking players in world football, I think. And I totally agree with you. He took some flack for that La Decisión video, and he took some flack because he wasn't Lionel Messi at Barcelona. But the guy, aside from a slightly subpar spell at Barcelona, has been pretty faultless for over a decade now. Real Sociedad, then Atleti, then that dodgy spell at Barca, and then back at Atleti, where they've fully re-accepted him, because it did take quite a lot for the fans there to re-accept him after he did go to Barcelona. So I think it's an excellent shout. Mikey, who's your vet?
I actually had a few here. I think I made the mistake of actually only putting into who scored over 32, which I thought would include 32-year-olds, but didn't. So I went for, I've only had 33 and over players, I think, but I think Griezmann probably is the one. I think Griezmann, if it wasn't for that World Cup, would probably be the shoe-in for most improved as well, but obviously did have that amazing World Cup. Was also pretty good at Atleti in that first half of the season, but really came alive in the second half. I had a few, like Kieran Trippier, I think, has had an excellent year despite the last month being pretty dodgy. Ilkay Gundogan, I think, for especially the second half of the season at City. Luka Modric, although, his performances have probably been outshone by Jude Bellingham this term, but second half of last season, brilliant. Kyle Walker as well at Man City, but I can't argue with Griezmann. The numbers are just there, aren't they?
I googled the definition of Renaissance, and it was the revival of European art, and that is Griezmann.
Belinda! This needs to become Belinda and Griezmann up a tree. This is amazing. Okay, love it. Right, we've done veteran. Where are we moving to next? Should we go to Player of the Year? Yeah, the big one.
Player of the Year.
I think we might all be in a. Well, let's see.
I don't know.
Belinda kicked off first last time. Mikey, who's your Player of the Year for 2023?
We didn't allow him for Wonderkids, and for good reason. I've put Jude Bellingham for Player of the Year.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there are some other shouts. Certainly a certain person at Man City. I do feel like I've gone a bit anti-Man City on this. I've not picked Pep for Manager of the Year. I've not picked Haaland for Player of the Year. It's not the bias. I think maybe I'm just a little bit bored. I think I'm just maybe a little bit bored, and I just think, for what Bellingham has achieved this year is remarkable. A little bit like Rice at Arsenal, Bellingham going from Borussia Dortmund to Real Madrid and just being Real Madrid's best player. It's just ridiculous. And I think it maybe I've picked him slightly because of my own perceptions. I thought when Real Madrid signed Bellingham in the summer, I did not think in any way that Bellingham would have the kind of impact that he's had. I still thought that Real needed a top-class striker. I think most people did, to be fair. I wasn't unique in that. But I also wasn't sure whether Bellingham was going to just step into that midfield and dominate it straight away. They still had Modric in amazing form. They still had Kroos, who had a great season last year. Camavinga had a brilliant season last year and was going to be kind of reintegrated into that midfield. Fede Valverde, great goal-scoring form from midfield throughout his Real Madrid career. So he was stepping into what was already the most exciting midfield cohort in world football. And Ancelotti literally changed the system that they played in order to get the best out of him. And 17 goals and 5 assists in all competitions this term, or at least in the league and Champions League this term. He was brilliant for Dortmund last season as well. Like, I do think that had he been fit enough for those last 2 games of the season, Dortmund probably would have won the league, like especially with the leadership that he brings on the field, that never say die attitude, that willingness to be able to call out his teammates. Like, I think he has had a really remarkable year, and I just can't quite look past him. But equally, Erling Haaland has, he's not been bad, has he?
Not been too bad. Not been too bad. I mean, yeah.
I think Bellingham. One thing I'll say about Bellingham is Bellingham has undoubtedly had a better 2023-24 so far than Haaland.
Yeah,
and I think that does count for something.
I think we're factoring into, maybe it's the last 4 months is putting too much weight on this. But then he was Bundesliga Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And I actually thought I thought Musiala was better than him in the first half of the year, but Bellingham definitely really stepped up in the second half before those injuries. Before we get into anyone else, Belinda, who did you go for?
Well, so I'm being shameless here. I just assumed everyone was going to argue Haaland, so I was going to shout out Alisson Becker.
Nice.
Player of the Year.
You said she was a Liverpool fan.
I'm being shameless.
Wow.
I'm being shameless.
Wow.
But like, okay, so he's been the best in the world in his position for the calendar year, in my opinion. Like, not just is his like save percentage in the 99th percentile, but he's active as well. With Liverpool's high line, there's times where in possession he's actually having to come out and be a false centre back in possession, the way where he's picking up the ball with his feet and having to play out. And Liverpool are in a title race this year because of him. Do you think
he's been your best player?
Yeah, because
better than Salah?
Yes, because it happens more often than not. There's a game where at 0-0 or 1-1 he has to make a big save. Like, it's probably if we play every 4 games, it probably happens 3 times out of every 4. So he's always crucial in every result that we get. And then even last year when Liverpool were not good and everyone fell off in the outfield, he was the only player who was consistent, and he consistently stayed at a level despite everyone else dropping off. So that's why I've put him as my Player of the Year.
I like it
because of how just consistent he's been over the year. Obviously, football is a cruel game, and his biggest mistake came in that Real Madrid first leg Champions League game. But
there's a few other shockers in that one as well.
Yeah, so that team wasn't at a level. But like, I know it's when we're talking about this type of title of Player of the Year, it's hard to give it to a keeper when the team hasn't won a title or a trophy. But like, it's not been because of him.
Yeah.
Like, if 3 of the other players in the 11 could be at his level for the entire season, that Liverpool team would win trophies.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's definitely worth a shout, to be honest. I think maybe Ter Stegen was almost as good as him last year, as in last season, but has obviously had his injury. Wasn't as good before his injury either as well. I mean, I just think it's very difficult to look past Erling Haaland, to be honest. I mean, it seems almost silly to go too much into it, but I mean, he broke the Premier League goal scoring record, 36 goals, absolutely smashed the Premier League goal scoring record, scored 11 in the Champions League, he scored 5 in one game, and people talk about, that he didn't score after was it the last 16 or the first leg of the quarterfinals, I believe, as if I don't think that really takes away from what he did last year. I think he was absolutely exceptional. I think he scored in 23 Premier League fixtures. That's pretty insane. And yeah, I ended up with over 50 goals. Surprisingly, creative as well in terms of his assist numbers were pretty solid as well, 9 assists. And yeah, he hasn't started as well this season. Was a little bit off it in terms of his finishing, I think. A lot of big chances missed, but then a lot of big chances missed last year. He makes passes into opportunities. He makes opportunities into goals. Like, you can put the ball anywhere near him and he can pretty much get a shot off. He's pretty unique. And I think scoring 50 goals for a team that wins the treble, it would feel wrong. I really wanted him to win the Ballon d'Or because I think he can only really win it every other year because it's so weighted towards how well you do in an international tournament. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like Norway are going to, they're struggling to qualify for them, let alone dominate them. So I think we should give it to Haaland.
Yeah, we should give it to Haaland.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
Fair enough. I mean, Bellingham's got a very good shout for that. If Bellingham carries on at this form, he's got a very good shout for the Ballon d'Or next year, to be totally honest. I think he's been the form player at the start of the season by a distance, to be honest. Right, let's move on to one of our more niche categories, Game of the Year. 2023 very difficult to do this. If you work in football, or even if you watch football, there's so many games every year.
Yeah.
Quite difficult to pick one out. But Belinda, what did you go for?
Oh, so there was this small game in March
Yeah.
at Anfield where Liverpool beat Man United by 7-0.
Mikey's going to walk off set.
Yeah.
I might do.
Oh, do you know what? That was a really good.
Was that your funnest afternoon?
Yeah, because you know what? It was my birthday.
Oh,
really?
Yeah,
Oh
not
my
that day,
days.
but that week. And so I had a birthday meal planned anyway that evening.
Nice.
And literally, as soon as the game finished, my brother was like, "Can we just like cancel the meal and just stay and watch all the post-match analysis?"
And you were
of
like,
the seven
"Yeah."
goals?" No, we did go out,
Okay.
but we recorded it and came back and watched it later.
Oh.
So yeah, no. You know, after the 5-0 the year before away from home at Old Trafford, you kind of think, "Oh, that's never happening again. That's once in a lifetime stuff. This is peak football as a fan.
Yeah,
It's never going to get better than this." Then it does. You can score 7, especially because it was like 6 in one half as well.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I was watching the highlights of that the other day. I mean, one just before half time, I think
Yeah,
it was.
Gakpo at half time, and then like Nunes gets 2 as well. Salah takes his shirt off again. Clean sheet as well.
Crazy
Bruno
stuff.
Fernandes asked to be subbed off apparently. Like
Yeah,
Have you
it's-
eradicated that from your mind, Mikey? I suppose it
Little bit.
probably isn't
I
your
think-
game of the year.
I think no, but like I think I think what's really interesting about that game though, and why it actually is like probably one of the most significant games of the year, is that like United haven't really been the same since. You know, like it came at a time in that season when United were,
You won
you
the
know,
Carabao
I think
Cup
on,
once
on
before.
balance had been a better team than
Yeah.
Liverpool, generally speaking, that season. They just won the Carabao Cup. They went into that game thinking this is probably the first time that we were going to Anfield in a long, long time where we could actually get a result here. Like I remember thinking like that, like United could even win at Anfield, like, and I haven't thought that in years. And then for that to happen, and I don't think it was necessarily, you know, like I don't think Liverpool had. I'm not even sure how many shots Liverpool had. They certainly didn't have as many shots as they did in that 0-0 the other night. And that's not to say that they weren't better, because like Liverpool were, you know, shooting a lot from outside the box in that 0-0. But it was a bit of a freak game. Like everything Liverpool hit went in. There were like more mistakes in that United back line than there had been before that. And I think like psychologically, I think it did have a big effect on that United team. Like United were not the same team after that for the rest of the season. They obviously haven't been anywhere near where they were at kind of halfway through last season this term as well. So yeah, I think in terms of like
A seismic game.
a seismic game. Yeah, I think it is. I know it's only like a league game. It wasn't like a cup knockout or anything. But yeah, like I think it was a really, really significant result.
What did you go for?
And one that, and I guess it's the same for Liverpool as well. You know, Liverpool ended up, you know, finishing the season quite strongly. You know, have gone into the season really strong as well. I've gone for Chelsea 4, Man City 4.
That was fun.
I just think, again, like you say, Dukes, there's so many games. I forget most of them. To be honest. Like, watch so many, I forget most of them. I was even trying to like remember who scored in this game, so I can't really go into too much detail with it. But I just think like I can't remember a game this year in which the quality was so good. Like, and I think like this is the thing. Like, as much as, you know, as much as we do love to hate on Chelsea on this channel when they're doing badly. Like Chelsea, I think this season have been a lot better than they than their position in the table suggests. I was looking at like Nicholas Jackson is like top 10 strikers in Europe for like non-penalty XG. Like he has actually had like a pretty fine season so far. Still gets a lot of stick.
7 goals in the league, I think, scored.
and I know 3 of those came against Spurs in that absolute free game. And that was what's funny about this game.
It came so soon after.
That Monday before this game, it was that Chelsea 4-1 Spurs, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, like, that's what football's all about." It was, you know, just absolute chaos. Like, couldn't take my eyes off it. That Chelsea Spurs game, I could absolutely take my eyes off it. Like, it was chaotic, but it was also kind of like it didn't thrill me in that way. It was
Felt
just
too weird.
It was just like Tottenham are defending with a high line, like despite everything. Chelsea are like actively choosing not to defend set pieces. Like it felt like, I don't know, it felt like it just generally felt like watching like mates in a park, and and it was and that can be entertaining, but it just didn't. I don't know, it didn't get me. Chelsea 4, Man City 4. The amount of toing and throwing in that game. Like the quality that Chelsea showed against a really good Man City side, the fact that Cole Palmer scored that penalty in the last minute, like I don't know, yeah, there wasn't a moment in that game where I wasn't glued to it, and I just thought, yeah, like it both provided goals and it was like quality throughout. It was like actual quality football throughout. I thought, yeah, both sides were super impressive. The fact that City thought they'd won it late on and then hadn't, like it just, yeah, it kind of had everything.
Had a lot of narrative.
Had a lot of narrative. Whether it will, I don't know whether like it is as significant as that 7-0 though. But like I think that's just the game I was most entertained by this year.
Sterling as well was the other goal scorer.
Yes, of course, against his former club, and had a great game. So yeah.
Nice.
What about you, Dukes?
I went for a game last season, back end of last season. It's the game that I most fondly associate with the treble winners. It's when they beat Real Madrid 4-0 at the Etihad. We were actually watching at Clubhouse 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And where we filmed Sunday Vibes, for everyone that doesn't know, I'm sure you guys do know. And it was probably the most complete performance I've ever seen from a Man City side under Guardiola. Well, under any City side, to be honest. I thought they were absolutely faultless from start to finish. And people forget that in the first leg, De Bruyne scores in the second half to equalise after Vinicius Junior puts Real Madrid ahead. But it was quite an even game, I think, for long stretches of that. And it felt like De Bruyne's moment really in that Champions League campaign, after so many disappointing moments in the Champions League in big games for Belgium, was really that equaliser at the Bernabeu. And then in the second leg at the Etihad, they absolutely annihilated them from start to finish. And it was a strong Real Madrid side. It was still, they were the Champions League holders at the time after beating Liverpool. Still had Karim Benzema. Obviously they didn't have Jude Bellingham, etc. But this was, a side that had won their 14th Champions League the year before, beating Man City in the semi-final with 2 late goals. And it felt like anything could happen at the Etihad. Could Real Madrid use that nous to get over the line once again? Could City finally get through to another Champions League final after so many disappointing defeats in semi-finals? And yes, they could. And Bernardo Silva was absolutely faultless. I think De Bruyne ended up with 2 assists. And it led up to a final which was a bit of a dull affair. But that was the game that I'm going to remember the Champions League by in that year. And it's probably the game that I'm going to remember that City side by. I thought they were absolutely superb. So for me, that was the game of the year. It wasn't particularly close, but it was certainly dramatic. And I remember as soon as the final whistle went, it was the first time that I'd really seen Twitter unify to talk about the 115 charges. They were like, whatever we've just witnessed isn't legal, so we're gonna mention that to try and bring them down. Yeah. And I was like, it's a bit petty because the 115 charges existed 90 minutes ago, but you could just, what Twitter's like, etc. They were willing to drag people down. But for me, that was game of the year. What's our verdict then?
I think it's tough.
I think Liverpool Man United was definitely the most dramatic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the Champions League one, just because I don't think it was a particularly memorable Champions League season in general. That's not any shade on City. They obviously won a treble. It was memorable for them.
The second half of the draw, the other side of the draw wasn't particularly high quality.
Yeah.
It was like Napoli didn't do that well in their quarter-final against Milan. Wasn't a great Milan side. I think they finished 5th in Serie A and they reached a semi-final. So I kind of get what you mean about the Champions League. What do you reckon then? Game of the year?
I might have to go with the 7-0, to be honest, just because it did have a really big effect on this year. I think, and when people, I think that's the result out of all of these that will be probably remembered the most. Maybe that's just because Liverpool and United fans are have both very big fan bases, and maybe we're being a bit Premier League biased here. And to be fair, I think this season, let's not forget, I think that 0-0 between Liverpool and Man United was only the 4th 0-0 of the entire campaign. The Premier League this season has been crazy. Maybe it's because of longer games, maybe it's because of harder defences and injuries, but there have been a ton of really entertaining high-scoring games in the Premier Leagues this season. So I feel like we've probably maybe done a disservice to Brighton, Nottingham Forest, which was a great game. There's so many great fixtures that have taken place between kind of the more middling teams. So I guess it's quite top 6. We've been quite top 6 past, haven't we?
There will be 4-4s in the future. How many times is Liverpool and Man United going to beat each other 7-0?
There we have it.
I don't know. It's happened quite a few times in recent years with Liverpool thrashing Man United.
Belinda has spoken. We're giving it to Liverpool Man United. It was pretty seismic, as I said earlier. Right, breakout start of the year. Mikey, let's hear from you on this. I don't know whether you've got a couple, and then Belinda and me will pick from your few.
But I've got a couple, and they're both shout out to the Belgian Pro League because they're both former Union Saint-Gilloise players, one of whom will appeal to you, Dukes, Victor Boniface.
Great suggestion.
I think he has really been a breakout star this year. I think he probably is actually the breakout star of the year for me. I've got another player down, but he's not had quite a good season this season. 13 goals, 8 assists in the league in Europe for Leverkusen. We've obviously spoken about Florian Wirtz already. They're having a brilliant campaign. But last year, 15 goals and 9 assists. in the league and Europa League for Union Saint-Gilloise.
He was joint top scorer in
the Europa League with Marcus Rashford. He was the Bully, going on to this season, he's been voted the Bundesliga Rookie of the Month for 4 months in a row, which is just ridiculous. I don't remember them ever doing it like that, really. But yeah, fair enough. John Joe Kenny once won the Bundesliga Rookie of the Month when he was at Schalke. John Joe Kenny. But anyway, yeah, he's just been absolutely brilliant, and I think he really is a breakout star, because before that move to Union Saint-Gilloise in 2022, he'd only scored 13 goals across 4 years at Bodo Glimt. So did
his ACL twice.
Mad. So to come back from that and to first of all step up in what is an increasingly competitive league in Belgium, and then to step up again under Xabi Alonso to I know he's not a like for like replacement, but to when they lost a player like Moussa Diaby in the summer, and to come in and take that centre forward slot and show the all-round game that he has, I think I think he is definitely my choice. My other choice was going to be Kaoru Matoma, but I don't think he's had as good a 23-24 season. Last year, absolutely, he was basically my favourite player in the league. He probably still is in my top 3 favourite players in the league to watch, absolutely. And the fact he's now rated by the Football Observatory, or valued by the Football Observatory at €80 million, speaks volumes for a player who only cost them 3 mil in 2021. But yeah, I think Boniface for me. I don't know, have you
Fair
two
enough.
got any
I
suggestions?
had one down. I went with a guy that had only played 11 professional games before the start of last year, and then exploded. Well, he exploded at the start of 22-23 and has just carried it on in 2023 rather. I'm getting my years muddled up. Xavi Simons.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, huge wonder kid. Barcelona, PSG. Talked about, since he was about 14, 13 on Twitter. But yeah, went to PSV on loan last year. Ended up as the Eredivisie top goal scorer, over 20 goals in all competitions. Brought back to PSG, then loaned to RB Leipzig this season, and he's been absolutely superb at Leipzig already. Only Openda has been involved in more league goals than him, which is 11. Younger as well than Victor Boniface, which is, I think, slightly more impressive, but then has had more of a footballing
Has
education.
he turned 21 yet, or is he still only 20?
I think he's only 20.
Okay, because I mean he would have been a great shout for Wonderkid.
Yeah.
I probably would have picked him, to be
I
honest.
knew I had him down for breakout star. But yeah, I think he's been absolutely superb. Maybe slightly faded in the last few weeks compared to his start at Leipzig, but I think he's been pretty good, and Leipzig are in for a big year next year. I mean, they've got that huge tie against Real Madrid in the last 16, which I think they've got a decent opportunity in, given that Alaba's now done his ACL, Militao's out with an ACL, Courtois out with an ACL, or at least some serious injury, Courtois. So yeah, they're pretty threadbare in defence, and Leipzig have a load of attacking options, and they've been a little bit inconsistent. They're still recovering from Nkunku leaving, Gavardio leaving, Belinda's probably new favourite player, Dominic Szoboszlai, leaving as well. So I think he's done really well to, at times, carry a Leipzig side and provide so much entertainment, so much quality. So those are the names in the hat, Belinda. You get ultimate say.
I really like that Xavi Simons shout, because I just hadn't considered it at all. But that stat of the 4 months in a row he got Rookie of the Month award, that's another real stat.
That's breakout star right there, isn't it?
Yeah, that is literally the criteria. So yeah, I'm going to give it Boniface.
I like
Sorry.
it. I like it. No worries. Belinda, you're actually my breakout star of 2023. For this episode of Sunday Vibes, and your love of Griezmann in particular. But guys, that is all we've got time for on Sunday Vibes for this week. And actually, giving Belinda some props, you guys also at home, you're all our stars of the year, because it has been a challenging year at Football Daily, particularly the last few months, as you all know, and you guys have really stuck by us, so we really do really appreciate it, and look forward to 2024. There's going to be loads more content from myself and Mikey, and hopefully Belinda as well, and numerous others on this channel as well, so it's going to be a good one. Anything else you'd like to say, Mikey, before we wrap up for 2023?
There will be one more Sunday Vibes on New Year's Eve.
We're shooting that in about 2 minutes time.
We'll be shooting that very soon. So stay tuned for that. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you don't, then just hopefully you're having a holiday anyway, and just having a nice little winter break. As Jiggy said, thanks so much for sticking by us and still appreciating the content and everything.
Nice. Lots of love from us. Bye. Happy Christmas.